of my, I'm an Aries woman, like Joan Crawford, Betty Davis, and so on. We have a lot of problems with people, okay, because of this. We're just so obnoxious. I'm 44 years old. People are still having to speak to me, and I knew that was very rude. You shouldn't behave like that. You shouldn't. And people, even today, people are always lecturing me about my excessive behavior and the way I completely ignore social forms and decorum and so on and so on. So it's been a struggle for me. For me, okay, see, this is why I see society as civilizing. I don't see society as oppressive, because in my case, okay, my barbaric energy needs to be contained. Needs to be contained. Otherwise, I'd be killing people and stealing and God knows what else. I'm just like this egomaniac. I'm an Aries, pure egomania. Right?
Let's begin by looking at the 60s. What happened to the realism of the 60s? What happened to the idealism of the 60s?
I think the whole thing just got out of control. I mean, and I think part of it was the contempt for the older generation, and that older generation, the sense that, oh, what are, this, we have nothing to do with you, and we have something new and something new to offer, and we're not going to listen to you at all. And part of that came from the fact that our parents, one didn't realize it at the time, but as the years went on, I saw it very clearly. Our parents were resting, okay, after decade after decade of the Depression, the rise of fascism and Nazism, World War II, the bomb, the discovery of the concentration camps, the Cold War, and so on. And our parents wanted a better life for the children than they had had. They had had nothing since they were young but worry, but anxiety, but darkness. Right? So they were determined to create an environment that would protect their children from what they had suffered. As a consequence, they did not tell us about the the realities of the world. And I think that that's what I felt. Growing up in the 50s, I thought, what? This is so boring. This is so boring. This is so sanitized. I can't stand this. I felt like I was in prison in the sex roles of the 50s and in the politics of the 50s. I just felt I can't. I mean, I'm still claustrophobic from it. We have this TV series down here, Happy Days, which is given a very biased picture of what the 50s were like. This idea that somehow a black-jacketed guy like Fonzie could be received at the house of the red-haired boy. Okay, I mean, that's absurd. The hoods could never be received. There was absolutely a repressive era where the hoods represented the criminality and sexuality and everything that was outlaw and so on and so forth. Right? And so I feel the Twilight Zone very accurately represents the 50s sensibility. That is a sense of normality, which is then disturbed by eruptions of what has been repressed. Okay, what has been repressed in the cellar, what has been put up in the attic. And I feel that my works in Sexual Personae, I feel that what I'm doing is going down into the cellar and up into the attic, and bringing into the eyes of everyone what our parents did not want to think about. Everything, whether it's pornography or aggression or Nazism, the inner aggression of the human soul and so the inner evil of the human soul. Right? So I think that our parents' reaction was excessive. That tranquility was a false tranquility. The sunny Rousseauist, optimism of the 50s, the normality of the 50s. All right, that was an excessive reaction to something that had been excessive, and then our reaction was excessive to the 50s, and out of that came another excess, the conservative backlash. But I think we're waking up from everything now. It's the end of the century. It's the end of the millennium. All right, we're reassessing, and I feel there's something happening. All right, I have been saying my ideas for 20 years. No one listened. I couldn't get published. I couldn't get hired, and suddenly people are listening and understanding what I'm saying. And it suggests to me that there is a kind of cyclical pattern at work, and we've gone through a full cycle, and we're coming back.
Well, so there was excess, but I'd rather have excess with passion than no passion.
But the point is, it's self-destructed, and you had a conservative backlash. There's something much worse that happened. Okay, because law and order must go on. We must have law and order. We cannot have a situation where everyone does his own thing. We cannot have rioting in the streets. One has to be realistic about achieving political ends. What I have learned, okay, is I've learned how slowly institutions change. And in fact, if an institution were to change rapidly, that's fascism. I began to realize that slowness, okay, which I hated when as a young person, that the slow, boring movement of the law in the courts, okay, is what prevents mob hysteria from lynching you, okay, right? And because I felt it myself. I'm very obnoxious still, and I'm still, I mean, just yesterday I was carrying on in the meeting or something, but the thing is that now I'm more realistic. I understand that institutions change slowly. So my thing is not we want the world, we want it now. My thing is that, all right, 1 year from now, if I keep on, steadily, 2 years from now it'll change. See, all right, and I also have learned how to pick my fights. My thing was like everything. I had endless energy. Oh, people think I'm energetic now. Oh, I'm a shadow. I had so much energy I could stay up all night. And my thing was this issue, that issue, that issue, that. Now I learn how to pick my fights, and also how to present in a way that does not alienate the very people I need for a consensus in order to get my aim achieved. And that's maturity.
Nowhere has Camille Paglia inspired more poison ink than with her criticisms of modern feminism. Feminist writers have attacked and condemned her for her defense of pornography and prostitution, and for her depiction of modern feminists as blaming society, and particularly men, for all their problems.
I consider myself a feminist. I was like the earliest feminist that anyone's ever known, because I was born in 1947, and within a few years I was in open revolt against my sex role. I could not bear what was demanded of me as a woman in society. I did not identify at all. I probably have like a massive gender dysfunction from it. I did not identify at all with being a woman, and I rebelled against it by, from earliest years, choosing transvestite Halloween costumes, which were just unheard of for, for an Italian American girl at that time in the 50s. So I mean, I was like 5, 6, 7. I was 8. I was a toreador, a Roman soldier, a Napoleon photograph and so on, and I was trying to telegraph to the world my inner sense of my own resolution, my desire for achievement and so on. So I was in open revolt for years before there was a context, and because I began thinking about sex so much earlier than other people, I really got out of sync, I think, with the contemporary feminist movement. By the time I read Simone de Beauvoir, I was 16, 1963, right? It was before Betty Friedan's book was just coming out at that time, right? So already I was full-fledged confrontational feminist. I identified strongly with Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart was a great craze of mine for like 3 years. I researched her deeply in high school, and what I identify with still is that pre-war feminism of those individualists, those absolutely self-reliant individualists like Katharine Hepburn, Amelia Earhart, and there's a whole generation of them. I mean, there were feminists long before contemporary feminism. Feminism has had 200 years of history, going all the way back to Mary Wollstonecraft's Manifesto. All right, and merely because I am critical of contemporary feminism does not mean that I am not a feminist 100%. All right. Now, for Jane Harrison, the greatest woman scholar who's ever lived, okay, from the pre-war era, in Great Britain, she was a feminist, and I feel that she took upon herself the highest male standards. She did not go around, grousing and complaining about men and about how men have kept women down. She knew it was her task to achieve and to ask of herself, the highest level of self-discipline. Right now, what has happened is that contemporary feminism bursting out in the late '60s. I tried to join it, and it was almost impossible for me to do so, because it at first began as a kind of rebellion by individualists, but it almost immediately became a kind of groupthink, knee-jerk ideology. My first arguments were about the Rolling Stones. The feminists of in New Haven could not accept that one could admire the Rolling Stones, so that despite their sexist lyrics. The idea of like responding to something artistically, while rejecting it politically, this kind of ambivalent response was impossible to them. Well, I had a huge screaming argument about the Rolling Stones, where in fact there was a whole group of these female musicians surrounding me, spitting in my face practically. We were all screaming at each other, right? And I said the Rolling Stone song "Under My Thumb" is art. They said, art, art. Nothing that demeans women can be art. Now, you see, there is where feminism went off. Now, there are two large areas where contemporary feminism is deficient. One is aesthetics. All right, they have no aesthetic. For them, beauty is simply an illusion and a delusion fostered by men who want to keep women down. So, and the other point where feminism is deficient is psychology. Right from the start, Kate Millett banned Freud as a sexist. All right, and that's where we got this, to me, absolutely intolerable present system of feminism, where all human problems are blamed and externalized on an outside, unjust social system. Now, again, from my study of Hinduism, Buddhism, even Catholicism, I feel that the answer is within. Yes, there are unjust social structures which we must change, right? But many human problems are coming from personal things, personal interrelationships, the relations between mother and son, or between spouses, between lovers, things coming perhaps from nature, all kinds of inequities that nature has put there between the sexes. So what has happened to feminism, all right, it has lost the ability of self-critique.
Has it achieved anything? I mean,
yes.
It was a positive force within the last 25 years.
Absolutely, yes. It demanded that women be taken seriously, okay? And I think that part of that is the legacy of the 60s, one of the enduring legacies of the 60s. So we began to get many more women, career women in law school, in medicine, and so on, right? And then that succeeded. In the 70s, we have those women, now in all these career tracks. But happiness has not been the result. I would say that part of the problem now, at least in America, is that you have women women trying to do everything or have it all, trying to have children and a husband and a household and do their career, and women are terribly torn. Now, so the feminist answer today is that we again must adjust the social system and allow for flex time and all these other things, when in fact it may be that nature puts a heavy burden on woman, and she is the childbearer. Now, I have made the choice that Katharine Hepburn made. Katharine Hepburn has spoken out and said that she feels that this idea that women can do it all is an absolute delusion. You're stealing from one or the other. You're stealing from your children and your husband, or your career, and you cannot do both fully. I am unmarried. I have no children. Okay, I'm extremely driven, and I have devoted everything to my work. Right? And I would not dream of and even in relationships. After a while, I realized it's unfair to even be in relationships because I take too much away from it. And anyway, so I think that feminism has gotten off track because of its very success. Now, that's what's happened, is that I think that because of feminism, but also because of men's acceptance of women in roles of authority, in the 80s and now in the 90s, women have been able to recover a sense of their own sexuality. And now I think it's time in the 90s for us to be thinking about sexual difference. That is, her eroticism, her lack of a problem with her own sexuality as a woman. This has been enormously important for feminism. She shows it's possible to be a feminist and to be fully sexual, even slutty, all right, as a woman. I feel like what she's doing is helping us to recover the myths of the Whore of Babylon, and of Mary Magdalene. That Madonna's literally rejoining the split archetypes of Mary, the Holy Virgin, the Mother, and Mary Magdalene, the fallen woman. These two split halves of woman that Western culture has been very schizophrenic about. And I think also that Madonna has brought back beauty and glamour into a feminism that is very suspicious of them and regards them as conspiracies by white heterosexual men to keep women down. Ridiculous, and because we have Japan as a culture completely oriented around the idea of beauty. I demonstrate in my book that ancient Egypt invented beauty, invented femininity. It's a great art form for 3,000 years there in Egypt and so on. So I think that that's one of the things Madonna gives. Madonna also, her energy. She has energy, she has passion, commitment, self-discipline, and a feeling for beauty and glamour and a feeling of reverence. And also, I like the way, I identify very strongly with her in the way that she identifies with both gay men and drag queens. And for me, the drag queen has a much more accurate sense of sex roles, historical sense of sex roles, than does contemporary feminism.
Camille Paglia doesn't look down her academic nose at television or movies or sports or rock and roll. In fact, it's just the opposite. Her 700-page book was written while she enjoyed them all, sometimes simultaneously. So if you're tempted to yell at your child for having the stereo or the television too loud when homework is being done, consider this.
Technology, for me, this is one of the ironies of my generation. Our generation was looking to nature and being very disrespectful about society and about capitalism. At the same time, it was the most electronic and electrified generation in history. I was the first person that I knew to have a stereo, to go to college with a stereo in 1964. No one had stereo. Not everyone has every kind of music-making equipment, right? And I had the earphones, and I was completely plugged in. And this is my attitude toward the world. On the one hand, I see all of nature and I honor it, the moon, the stars, the planets, all of that. As an astrologer, I just see it so clearly. But then I cannot go anywhere. I just feel so happy at home when I have the TV on and I have the earphones on, I have the telephone and I have the radio and I'm just like, the wires are crossing the floor. I'm always tripping over the wires. I just feel like I'm in this kind of space capsule. I'm just totally connected to the universe, and I think that's part of the universality of our vision. The fact that we're connected into the universe through this all this electronic machinery.
But you're only connecting with an electronic universe, not the natural one.
No, not really. No, because I think that on cable TV you can flick one channel and you'll see animals in Africa. You'll see things on nature. But that's the way of God Himself. Of checking in on what's happening on every possible station in the entire universe. I think this is definitely the wave of the future. I think our ability to, I feel that technology offers a kind of the Western version of expanded consciousness, all right? Because my ability to simply concentrate with all this going on, with a sensory flood of stimuli, that is what's different about my brain, okay, from the brains of the scholars who came before me. Because one part of my brain is totally rigorous and analytic in the traditional way, okay? The other part is this electrified brain that people have found no machine to measure yet. It's completely lurid, it's like neon, like this, all right? My ability to think in the face of incredible noise, for example. People say, how can you think with that noise? But I can only think when there's noise, all right? I have to flood my senses in order to really think. Right? For example, I feel that the brain has many tracks, and I have everyone in my generation. For 35 years, I've been listening to rock music. All of rock music has gone through this head again and again and again. It's all in there, right? And so I feel that I have a track of my brain which when I wake up in the morning, it's playing. It's constantly playing music, all right? Then I have another one that's a visual track, right? So I love to write when I have the earphones on. I'm listening to music. It could be classical music. It could be movie music. I love like Ben-Hur and all those like great like scores. It could be it's rock or disco. I love when I'm writing and so on, all kinds of things. And then I have the soap operas on without the sound, okay, right? So and I'm like I have the sound going very loud. I have the images coming into my brain. If I can't concentrate. If I am like trying to write without the sound and without the images, my mind wanders. I have to supply the music and I have to supply the images, okay? So what I'm saying is that our brains are completely different. It's something new. And I think we're moving outward toward that moment when we leave the Earth and go into outer space. Star Trek was the great phenomenon of my generation, okay? I think that our ability to let's say we have to take 40 years for a person to get from Earth to some planet. People will be born and will live and will die in space capsules, okay? And it was my generation, which was the first, okay, through this technological machinery, okay, to be able to have this sense of being a citizen of the universe. We are citizens of the universe. We have a truly international perspective through TV and through technology. It's very interesting, like they use metaphors like this in Buddhism and so on, the idea of that the mind should be like a still pond receiving messages from the universe. That's exactly how I feel when I'm looking at TV. I go completely blank, absolutely blank, all right? And that's why it's so refreshing to me. And I just love to sit there, like, I just go completely, and like after I've had like dinner and I've had like a glass of wine, I'm just sitting there with Entertainment Tonight, and something that's just completely glitzy, sensational. I just love that. I have such pleasure at it, okay, right? And I can feel that it's palpating a part of my brain that's not the other part of the brain. I can just feel, here, there's Liz Taylor, yet coming out of the hospital again, and yet there's another, it's all this like, that area of like sleazy eroticism and so on, right? I just feel it. The TV is literally an emanation, in some sense, of the popular mind. I feel that everything on TV is of interest to me. I love advertisements. I just wrote an essay talking about ads as an art form. They, in fact, I look at them. I love the speed of them.
But it really is the medium, isn't it? I mean, you're saying that it's
the medium itself. Yes,
the television itself is important.
I love the sleaziest parts of TV. Some academics like to say, "Oh yes, I like PBS or I like these documentaries." That's not my attitude. Or they want to talk ponderously about the problems with the news programs. Well, that's not what I regard TV as. I regard TV as this absolute river. It's like a river of images, okay, and things. Especially now with cable, where you can get like 37 different channels. And sometimes I just sit there and go zap, 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 zap. It's like an art form where you have this weird collage, you see, of completely discontinuous images. You'll go from the face of a religious figure, holding in the Bible, to suddenly the next thing, a girl like dancing with her boobs hanging out of her bra like that. And I think this is fabulous. This is the culture. The way we have all these strange things which cannot formally come together. These two figures, the evangelist preacher and the stripper, let's say, all right? Those two people can never meet, but television brings them together. They're both aspects of reality, and therefore the mind of the person watching TV, okay, is this a universal mind? Okay, so I feel totally open. I try to have an attitude of total openness to everything I see, and I have such enjoyment, such sensuous pleasure of enjoyment, okay, in watching television, and the colors, okay, the movements, everything about it, everything which strikes very book-oriented people as tinselly or squalid and so on. Those very things are exactly why I love TV.
From television to belly dancing to striptease to pornography, Camille Paglia writes and teaches about popular culture and sexuality. Where is there a place for the sacred in her world?
I'm saying that in Sexual Personae, I'm saying that Western culture has been formed this tension between the Judeo-Christian and the Greco-Roman traditions, and that it is not true that Judeo-Christianity ever defeated paganism. In fact, it went underground and has erupted at various moments, at the Renaissance, Renaissance art, and Romanticism, and now again in modern popular culture. And that paganism is not, it does indeed have a spirituality. In paganism, you have a unity between sexuality and spirituality, which is a great ideal. Christianity was not able to do this because it regards nature as a fallen realm, and our bodies is belonging to that fallen realm. So the soul is the thing that was created in God's divine image. So the closer you can come to God, the less sexual you are. And this produced the monasticism, of course, and celibacy of the Middle Ages. So yes, indeed, that's what I'm trying to show in my work. I'm trying to show the actual spiritual vision that's inherent in this highly eroticized point of view that paganism had. Right? And it's so difficult for people to understand this. Like I regard all striptease or belly dancing today as part of that long long line coming down from when dance was sacred in the cult around the Great Mother. And this is really true, that the belly dance, belly dancing is the last remnants of this long tradition going back. These movements of the hips, the overtly sensual and provocative pelvic motions of the belly dancer to evoke the fatigued libido of the various sultans and caliphs and so on and so forth. All that goes back to the temple prostitutes around the Great Mother, in the ancient Near East and so on. It's difficult for people trained in Judeo-Christianity to look at overt sexuality and regard it as in any way having anything to do with God, right? But it does. In Hinduism, there are temples in India which have copulated and nude couples, sometimes 3s and 4s on the temple. And so I'm entirely pro-pornography. When I look at pornography, for example, I see the energies of nature. Right? I see ultimately for Hinduism, those are creative and fertile energies. Right? People who look at pornography and see simply oppression, see male dominance and female submission, which by the way is completely false about pornography. That's simply not true. Often it's exactly the reverse.
For years, Camille Paglia's colleagues tried to avoid her. Despite having impeccable credentials from Yale University, she just didn't seem to fit in. But something has happened. Her ideas are now noticed and debated, and not just by academics. Her book, Sexual Personae, is available in paperback now, and it continues to sell amazingly well. Volume 2 on paganism and popular culture is due out later this year. But while her ideas are reaching more and more people, she remains an enigma, and she finds comfort in history.
From my earliest years, I was such an alienated being, okay, I think from my rebellion against my sex role in the early 50s. Right from the start, I felt when I went to I was a tiny child, I went to the museum, Metropolitan Museum, and I saw the great artifacts from Egypt and so on. I always felt that the study of history, that gave me a kind of perspective upon my own culture and allowed me to see my own identity, in a larger frame of reference. Right? And I think that the study of history has been, for me, my early passion was to be an archaeologist and Egyptologist. The study of history has been, for me, a liberation from the conventions of my own time.
For a lot of people, though, I think history is seen as something to be overcome. And your point is that it's something that has to be appreciated and delved into and brought to bear on what's happening now.
Well, see, that's why I see history in huge rhythms, enormously long rhythms. And that's why, I think most people are just trapped in the present. If you don't understand the whole past, you can't see where we're going because you don't see where we've been, all right? So I just see these huge rhythms operating, and I see that, popular culture has been this enormous transformation that happened, I feel, in the 1920s with the birth of sound pictures. That was the moment when I think high art lost its exclusive status and popular culture took over, and I think we're still in this rhythm. But I believe that we're still in the romantic rhythm. My mentor, Harold Bloom, also believes that we're still in the romantic era. That is the movement initiated by Rousseau's ideas in 1760. So that's what I see. And one long, huge pattern. Rock and roll is simply another eruption of that romanticism. And I see us still in that. And I think that the next, to predict, all right, I think the next rhythm will be inaugurated by someone from outer space. If we discover another civilization, another planet, if it turns out there's evidence for that, then that's the beginning of a new phase. I think when the people of the world, presumably, will see that we look more like each other than we do like that creature there, which looks like a blob of jello. All right, I think that may happen at a certain point, and I think that may terminate the phase we're in.
Okay. I'm happy.
All right.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, that's it.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
I feel often when I talk to people who are older than me, a generation older than me, academics and so on, their brains are very slow, okay, very slow. The speed of my mind is part of it's part of the stimulation I have received from all these sensory things in rock and roll and from TV. When MTV came along, like when here was 1984, 1983, 84, I felt it was exactly the way my brain had been operating for the prior 20 years. Flash, flash, flash. I'm the speed freak 60s, you know what it is? I never had to take anything because that's just me. I regard TV as this river. It's like a river of images, okay, and things, especially now with cable, where you can get like 37 different channels. And sometimes I just sit there, I go zap, 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 zap. It's like an art form where you have this weird collage, you see, of completely discontinuous images. It's very interesting, like they use metaphors like this in Buddhism and so on, the idea of that the mind should be like a still pond, receiving messages from the universe. That's exactly how I feel when I'm looking at TV. I go completely blank.